The day I turned 18 should have been one of the happiest days of my life. Instead, it became the day I lost everything. My name is Ethan Carter, and I grew up believing that family always comes first. My parents repeated those words so often that I never questioned them. Whenever my younger sister Olivia wanted something, I stepped aside. If she wanted the bigger bedroom, I gave it up. If she needed help with homework, I stayed awake with her. If money was tight, I wore the same clothes for years without complaining, because that's what family did, or so I believed. On the morning of my 18th birthday, I walked downstairs expecting nothing more than breakfast and maybe a simple happy birthday. Instead, I found my parents sitting silently at the dining table. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father stared at a stack of papers in front of him. Something felt wrong. "Sit down," my father said. His voice was cold. I obeyed. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, my mother whispered, "We're sorry, Ethan." Those words made my stomach tighten. Sorry? For what? My father slid a folder across the table. "I think you're old enough to take care of yourself now." I frowned. "I don't understand." He took a deep breath. "The money we saved for your college." He paused. "We've decided to give it to Olivia." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I honestly thought it had to be a joke. "What?" "She has more potential," he replied without emotion. "Medical school is expensive." I stared at him. "What about my future?" My mother finally looked at me, tears forming in her eyes. "You'll figure something out." 4 words. That's all my future was worth. "You'll figure something out." I looked at the folder. Inside were bank statements. Every dollar Grandma had left for my education, every birthday gift, every savings account. Gone. Over $100,000 transferred to Olivia's education fund. I couldn't breathe. "I worked for those scholarships," I said. "I got straight A's. I stayed home while my friends went out. I did everything you asked." My father leaned back. "And we're proud of you. But Olivia needs it more." Those words shattered something inside me. For years, I had convinced myself they loved us equally. I had been lying to myself. Olivia slowly walked into the kitchen. She looked uncomfortable. "Ethan." "I didn't ask for this." Before she could say anything else, my father interrupted. "It's already done. So let's stop arguing." I looked at my sister. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't refusing the money either. Silence can sometimes hurt more than cruel words. I stood up. "I need some air." As I reached the front door, my father's voice stopped me. "Actually," I turned around. He pointed toward 2 black trash bags sitting beside the wall. "Those are your things." For a second, I thought I had heard him wrong. "My things? You'll have to move out today." I laughed again, only this time I couldn't stop. "You can't be serious. We've already converted your room into Olivia's study." My mother started crying, but she didn't stop him. Not once, not a single word. I walked over to the trash bags. Everything I owned fit inside them. A few clothes, some old books, my high school diploma, a framed photo of me and my grandfather. That was it. 18 years of my life, reduced to 2 garbage bags. I picked them up without saying another word. As I reached the front porch, rain began to fall. Heavy rain, the kind that soaks you in seconds. I waited, just for a moment, hoping someone would call my name. Maybe Mom, maybe Dad, maybe even Olivia. No one did. The front door closed behind me, and with that sound, I realized something painful. I wasn't leaving home. I had already been replaced long before that day. The rain didn't stop, neither did I. I walked for nearly an hour without knowing where I was going. Every step felt heavier than the last. The 2 trash bags dug into my hands. Cars drove past me. People hurried home to their families. No one noticed the 18-year-old kid who had just lost his home. As the sun disappeared behind the clouds, I found a small city park. I sat on a cold wooden bench and stared at my phone. No missed calls, no messages, nothing. I kept telling myself, they'll call. Mom won't let this happen. An hour passed, then another. The screen remained dark. By midnight, I finally accepted the truth. No one was coming. I slept on that bench with my backpack under my head. The cold kept waking me up every few minutes. I had never felt so alone. The next morning, I went to the only place that still felt familiar, the grocery store where I worked part-time. As soon as I walked in, my manager, Mr. Harrison, noticed something was wrong. "Ethan, you look terrible." I forced a smile. "Long night." He looked down at the trash bags beside me. "You want to tell me what happened?" For a few seconds, I tried to hold everything in, but I couldn't. I told him everything, about my parents, about Olivia, about the college fund, about being thrown out. When I finished, he didn't say a word. He simply walked into his office. A minute later, he returned with a small envelope. "Take it." I looked inside. $500. I immediately shook my head. "I can't accept this." He smiled. "It's not charity. It's a loan. You can pay me back whenever you're able." My eyes filled with tears. For the first time in 2 days, someone believed I was worth helping. That afternoon, I found a tiny room for rent above an old auto repair shop. The wallpaper was peeling. The mattress was older than I was. The bathroom barely worked, but it had a roof, and for now, that was enough. That night, as I unpacked my 2 trash bags, I found the framed photo of my grandfather. I smiled. He used to tell me something whenever life got hard. A person's true character isn't revealed when life is easy. It's revealed when everything falls apart. I placed the photo on the small nightstand beside my bed. Then I opened my laptop. If I couldn't afford the university my parents had promised, I'd find another way. I spent the entire night searching for scholarships, community colleges, financial aid, part-time jobs, anything that could keep my dream alive. At 3 o'clock in the morning, an email caught my attention. Full scholarship available for outstanding academic achievement. I read every word twice. Then I smiled for the first time since leaving home. Maybe my parents had taken away my money, but they hadn't taken away my determination. And deep inside, I made myself a promise. One day, the people who believed I would never succeed would hear my name. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I refused to let the worst day of my life become the rest of my life. The scholarship application took weeks. Every night after work, I sat in my tiny room filling out forms, writing essays, and gathering every document they asked for. Some nights, I was so exhausted that I fell asleep with my laptop still open, but quitting was never an option. 3 months later, an email appeared in my inbox. My hands were shaking as I opened it. "Congratulations, Ethan Carter. You have been awarded a full academic scholarship." I read the first sentence over and over again. Then I smiled. For the first time since I had been thrown out, I felt like life was finally giving me another chance. I enrolled in college the following semester. It wasn't easy. During the day, I attended classes. In the evenings, I worked at the grocery store. On weekends, I delivered food and cleaned office buildings at night. Most days, I survived on instant noodles and coffee. While other students worried about parties, I worried about paying rent. There were nights when I only slept 3 hours. There were mornings when I almost gave up. But every time I felt weak, I remembered the 2 trash bags sitting on my parents' porch. That memory pushed me forward. 4 years later, I graduated at the top of my class. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, thousands of families stood and applauded their children. Parents hugged them. They took pictures together. My seat in the family section was empty. For a brief moment, it hurt. Then I reminded myself, I hadn't walked this journey alone. Mr. Harrison was there. He stood in the crowd, clapping louder than anyone else. After the ceremony, he shook my hand. "I told you," he said with a smile. "You were always meant for something bigger." A month later, I accepted my first job as a software engineer at a technology company in Seattle. The salary was more money than I had ever imagined earning. Instead of celebrating, I saved every extra dollar. I remembered what it felt like to have nothing. 5 years passed. I worked harder than anyone around me. While others left the office at 5, I stayed until 9. I learned everything I could: programming, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, business management. One evening, my boss called me into his office. "I have an offer for you," he said. I expected a promotion. Instead, he offered me a partnership to help launch a new technology company. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Everyone told me it was risky, but I had already lost everything once. I wasn't afraid of starting over. I accepted. The first year was brutal. We worked 16-hour days. There were months when the company barely made enough money to pay salaries, but we refused to quit. Slowly, clients started trusting us. One contract became 10. 10 became 100. Within a few years, our company was worth millions of dollars. The boy who had once carried everything he owned in 2 trash bags now owned a company that employed hundreds of people. Yet, despite everything I had achieved, there was one chapter of my life that had never truly ended. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Olivia since the day they closed the front door behind me. Until one quiet Sunday morning when my phone suddenly rang. The caller ID displayed a name I never expected to see again. Mom. My finger hovered over the screen. Mom. For 15 years, that name had meant nothing more than a memory. She had never called on my birthdays, never congratulated me when I graduated, never asked if I was alive. And now, she was calling. I took a deep breath and answered. Hello? For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then I heard a quiet voice. Ethan. It sounded weak, older, almost unfamiliar. I know I don't deserve to call you, but we need your help. Before I could respond, the call ended. I stared at my phone. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Pity? Curiosity? That evening, I searched my family's names online. What I found shocked me. Olivia had dropped out of medical school 3 years earlier. She had secretly borrowed hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in a private medical startup. The company collapsed. The investors sued everyone involved. My parents had mortgaged their home to pay her debts. Then they borrowed even more money. In the end, they lost everything: the house, their savings, even my father's retirement fund. The family that once believed money could solve every problem had run out of money. The next morning, I was sitting in my office on the top floor of our headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Seattle skyline. My assistant knocked softly. "Mr. Carter, there's a couple here asking to see you." I told them you were busy. They said they're your parents. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I slowly stood up, walked to the window, and looked down at the city below. 15 years ago, I had been standing in the rain, holding 2 trash bags. Today, I owned the building I was standing in. Life really did have a strange sense of humor. I'll see them. A few minutes later, the conference room door opened. My parents walked in. I barely recognized them. My father's hair had turned completely gray. His shoulders were bent. My mother looked exhausted. The confidence they once carried was gone. Neither of them could look me in the eyes. Finally, my father spoke. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I should have listened to you. We thought we were protecting Olivia. We ended up destroying our entire family." My mother burst into tears. "We've regretted that day for years. I wanted to call you so many times, but I was too ashamed." I listened quietly. Not once did I interrupt. Then I asked the question that had lived inside me for 15 years. "When you watched me walk away with 2 trash bags, did either of you think about where I would sleep that night?" The room fell silent. My father lowered his head. My mother covered her face. "No," my father whispered. "We were selfish. We believed you'd survive, and we convinced ourselves that made it okay." I nodded slowly. Then I looked out the window once more. The city stretched for miles beneath us. Everything I owned, everything I had built, came from the day they believed I was worth nothing. When I turned back toward them, my father reached into his worn briefcase and placed a thick stack of unpaid bills on the table. His hands were trembling. "Ethan, we have nowhere else to go. We're about to lose everything. Please, you're our last hope." For a long moment, I didn't say a word. I simply looked at the 2 people sitting across from me. 15 years ago, I had begged them for a chance. Now, they were begging me. Life had come full circle. My father slowly pushed the stack of unpaid bills toward me. We owe almost $200,000. The bank is taking the house next week. We've sold everything we own. My mother wiped away her tears. We have nowhere left to go. I leaned back in my chair. The room fell silent. Then I asked one question. When you gave Olivia my college fund, did either of you ever stop to ask what would happen to me? Neither of them answered. Finally, Dad whispered, "No. We believed you were strong enough to survive." I nodded. I was, but not because of you. Because I had no other choice. Tears streamed down my mother's face. I've replayed that day in my mind thousands of times. If I could change one decision in my life, it would be that one. For the first time, I believed her. Not because of her words, because of the guilt in her eyes. Just then, the conference room door opened. A woman slowly walked inside. It was Olivia. She looked nothing like the confident girl I remembered. Her expensive clothes were gone. Her shoulders were slumped. Her eyes were swollen from crying. The moment she saw me, she broke down. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I should have given the money back. I should have told Mom and Dad no. But I was selfish. I kept thinking I'd fix everything later. I never did." She couldn't even finish her sentence. She buried her face in her hands. "I ruined this family." I stood up, walked to the window, and stared at the Seattle skyline. For years, I had imagined this moment. I thought it would make me feel victorious. Instead, I felt empty. Because revenge couldn't give me back the 18-year-old boy who slept on a park bench. It couldn't erase the nights I cried alone. It couldn't replace the family I had lost. I turned around. "I'll pay every debt you owe." All three of them looked at me in shock. But listen carefully. This isn't because you deserve it. It's because I refuse to let your mistakes turn me into someone without compassion. I've spent 15 years building my life. I won't spend another 15 carrying hatred. My father began crying. The strongest man I had ever known was crying like a child. "I'm so proud of you, son." Those words were 15 years too late. I smiled gently. I didn't build this life to finally earn your approval. I built it because I learned to believe in myself. A week later, every debt was paid. I bought my parents a small apartment near a quiet park. Nothing luxurious, just a safe place to begin again. Olivia found a job at a local clinic. For the first time in her life, she earned everything she had. Months passed. Slowly, our conversations became less awkward. The pain never completely disappeared. Some wounds never do. But we stopped pretending the past had never happened. One Sunday afternoon, my father looked at my two children playing in the backyard. He quietly said, "Promise me something." I looked at him. "Never make them compete for your love." I smiled. "I won't." Because love isn't something children should have to earn. As the sun began to set, I realized something. Success wasn't the biggest victory of my life. Forgiveness was. Not because my family deserved it, but because I deserved peace. If there's one lesson my story can teach, it's this. Sometimes the people who break your heart also teach you how strong your heart can become. Never let someone else's decision define your future. Your past may shape your story, but it never has to write your ending.